Coming up on the Branding Deep Dive podcast.
When he first started off, when they were having one of the biggest Black Friday sales, right? And their website crashed, like any other website, because they're just growing up and all that. There's like just getting big, and their website crashed. So there's a lot of customers that were not happy because they didn't get their products. He handwritten notes, 2,500 handwritten notes to his customers, apologizing for the crash and giving discount for the upcoming Gymshark products. Like, you don't find people as involved. Like, I personally would not say that, right? 2,500, for people like from a time perspective, like, you gotta see like how much he's already making millions. You already got like tons of things going on in his head. There's like a huge crash. Instead of dealing with the crisis, he is making sure that his customers don't feel left out. And that again goes back to the whole customer experience and building loyalty and trust, because he made that sacrifice. Whatever time it took him, whatever effort he took, he had to make that back then. So they're still stuck with him and they're still appreciating the company right now.
This is Ahmed Cheema, and welcome to the Branding Deep Dive podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast where we have in-depth discussions about what brands are doing well to drive customer loyalty and how you can take those principles and apply them to your own brand. In this episode, we're talking to our good friend Rafi Hussaini about the fitness brand Gymshark. Even if you're not into fitness, you're going to want to stick around for this one because there's a lot of lessons that can be applied to any brand. Now, here's Rafi Hussaini.
All right, everyone. We're here today with Rafi Hussaini. Rafi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to us real quick?
Hey everyone, my name is Rafi Hussaini. I currently work for a nonprofit organization called Helping Hand for Relief and Development. Been with them for 5 years now. And most recently, for about, I think I would say 2 years ago, I recently got into fitness. And there was a huge transformation, huge reason behind it. I was actually chubby, 200 pounds. And here we are, and I'm really, really passionate about it. So here we are.
Hey, I want to let the audience know real quick that we are interviewing an influencer, an Instagram influencer right here, Rafi Hussaini. Look him up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I can attest to the transformation, too. I remember seeing him when I first got to Michigan, and then seeing him now, mashallah, he's doing good.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. It's a lot of hard work. But anyone can do it, I'll say that.
Yeah. Rafi, I see you wearing the brand of the company we're talking about today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be talking about?
Of course, this brand, it's really close to my heart actually right now, because it's the past year that I've been...
Literally. It's like right above his heart in the shirt that he's wearing.
I've been really inspired by this brand, Gymshark, right? That's what we're here to talk about. It's what we're here to unpack for our audience here. So just to give a brief history about Gymshark, it started off as, any other brand, just for apparel. And over the past 8 years, at this point, it is a whole community. It's more than just an apparel. It's more of a message. It's more of a like what a community should stand for, what people should inspire. What Gymshark means is something that every single community, every single person, every single athlete should look up to when they try to serve their own community. They started off with just, Ben Francis, the founder, he started off with designing clothes for himself. The reason for that being he is so much into fitness that he couldn't find what he liked wearing in the gym. So him and a group of 10, 15 people, they decided, you know what, we're gonna make something that we like. And he did that, and then he eventually thought about, and he had these fitness heroes that he used to follow on YouTube, Facebook, the social media influencers back then, which is 8 years ago. That's when the game was really beginning to spike up. And then he's like, you know what, I'm gonna send these to these people casually. He has no connections whatsoever, but he had hope and faith that they might respond. So he sent it to them, and he's like, this is what we think. What do you guys think? And they were all really excited for it. And some of these people, really interesting thing is that he sent to people like Jeff Said and Lex from UK. Some of Jeff Said was from Australia or US, I don't remember, but some of these people had never stepped foot in the UK. So when he sent them these pieces of clothing and invited them to come to a trade show, which was a year after he first went to a trade show, and that inspired him to set up a booth there, they were all really excited. First time coming to UK, and they spent everything, and Gymshark spent everything on them because he took care of their accommodation and everything. And Ben Francis says that even to this point, that's the best 10 to 15K he ever invested. Now, one of the really, really beautiful things that I see in this and why it inspires me is because, as we all have heard this common saying, follow your passion, don't do it for the money, money follows. This is a living example of that. He was never thinking about the money he's putting in. He never thought about that, oh, it's a 15K that he's going to lose. He just wanted to see that if this is a route he can take to benefit the community, to benefit other people, and it just took off. It's a rare case scenario that someone doesn't have to struggle as much as someone really doesn't have to struggle, or someone doesn't really have to go through a lot of rejections to get through where Ben Francis is, because he was working through school, college, the basic stuff that every kid does. But then he just went on and he just took off from there.
Rafi, you mentioned a lot. Okay, we went through a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. One of the things that stick out to me in what you just said is that Gymshark now represents a community, an aspirational community for fitness people, people that want to be fit and that kind of thing. And that's essentially their brand, right? And so what we want to deep dive and find out is, how did they get to that level, right? How did they get started? What was the initial, you touched on it a little bit already, but what was that first product that he sent to these people? What was different about it? What separated Gymshark, this small little company, from Nike, Under Armour, whatever else was on the market at the time?
Sure. So what they call, if you go on their website right now, what they call stingers are like these tank tops, right? So he sent those to a bunch of these people, and Jeff Said and these people that I mentioned, they just have weird names and I don't want to butcher them, but all these fitness people, they had really good physiques. Back then people looked up to them. They were these social media influencers of 2010, 2012, whatever the time was. And he sent them that, and then he had this Lexi tracksuit that's the name of the tracksuit that was really popular. So he mentions one thing that happened was at one of the trade shows, when the first trade show that all these fitness influencers were there, people knew about the Lexi tracksuit from these fitness influencers. And when they came to the trade show, he sold out almost everything on the trade show. The next day, he was just chilling on his couch watching TV, and randomly, without thinking anything, he puts it on his website. He goes, "I still have a few of these Lexi tracksuits in stock with other stuff." Puts it on his Facebook group, and within 30 minutes, 30,000 pounds. That's the sales. That's his number. Within 30 minutes, he had to shut down the website because the amount of sales that were going, because he didn't have anything in stock. So it was just a basic thing, just a basic idea of like leveraging the fitness people. And again, this is in his own words, that he didn't think of it like, oh, this is influencer marketing or this is social media marketing. He's just that these are the people that he loves. These are the people that inspire him. And he wants you to just, make it like, help them, work with them in general. And he just realized that, this is so much powerful that people who follow them came because of the fact that their role model, their hero is wearing something called Gymshark.
Yeah, so you're saying one of the key differentiating factors in the way they marketed their product in the early days is they reached out to these influencers. I guess back at the time that they're starting, they're probably not called influencers yet. They're just people that have a following, right? And so
right, and most of the people had like a huge following on YouTube, because he himself and his group of people, they were a little bit involved in YouTube and video making and all that. So that was just the same platform where he would follow people, and all he would do was just watch videos of World of Warcraft or fitness videos.
Even before that, I think you said that he had his product line, and then he went to this trade show thing.
Right.
And that is where he started getting like all of the sales. It sounded like he was making a few on his website before the trade show. They bought this place for the trade show, and they threw in all of their money, like any sales that had made from the website. They threw in the money to get the spot at the trade show, and they set up this, what do they call, like a pop-up shop type of thing in the trade show, and then they broke out. So I feel like one of the things that he did really well early on was go to where his target audience is, right? Sometimes, like in this scenario, literally physically go to where his target audience is. So I thought that definitely probably helped him kick off his marketing.
Right.
Let's
and
talk.
One thing, just to touch on what Abdul Mannan says, one thing he always says that trade show, I think it was called Body Pro or something back then. Yeah, that trade show is what inspired him to, go out and sell this stuff, because as you mentioned, he was already doing drop shipping. He was already selling supplements from his Gymshark. So Gymshark was already established brand for supplements from other places. But when he went to a trade show and he saw that there was a space in the fitness apparel, like there was something that was lacking, that's when he inspired. And as you mentioned, he put everything, all the money he had, 3,000 pounds, to book that trade show space. He put everything in there, and that's when he decided, you know what, we're gonna go from here.
So I want to talk about, you mentioned the Stinger and the Lexi tracksuit. What was special about the Stinger, right? Like what made this a product that people want and the Lexi tracksuit? Like what about the product was actually, you don't just sell out a product like that. 30,000 pounds in 30 minutes. That just doesn't happen.
Not only that, I kind of want to know, Rafi, you have your journey in fitness and then you have Gymshark. At what point in your fitness journey were you introduced to Gymshark? Was it introduced through that stringer that you talked about, or was it through something else? Had Gymshark already developed by that time, or what?
All right, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go for Abdul Mannan first. So for me, really when I was first, my fitness journey is just transformed in a way that at first it was all about, just losing weight, getting skinny like every other person.
Yeah.
And then I did more research and then I came to, building muscle and all that stuff. And then even though so at this point right now, I only buy from two brands, shout out to Project Rock and Gymshark. But the reason, because like the way they fit, the way they feel on my body, and even in Under Armour, you'll see a huge difference between Under Armour and Project Rock material, even though they're from the same brand. The way the Rock's, it's his own sentence that he works out and tests every single material that's made. So, so that's how you know that someone's standing behind their brand, is when they've actually tested the whole thing. And with Gymshark, when I saw that, I like, as I mentioned, I was following these people that I trust, my heroes, my role models in the fitness world, and I see all these like amazing colors, amazing design, amazing like things I've never seen before. I've always seen like sleeveless stuff with Nike and Adidas, but nothing like this sort. And then when I go on the website, you will see that this jumps into Cheema's question, is that Gymshark was not made for bodybuilders. Even a skinny person can wear a Gymshark stringer and he'll feel confident in that. He's not going to sink into it. He's not going to feel like, oh, I have no muscle whatsoever. That's what really separates them, because if you go to the website, you see their models, nobody's like a really built bodybuilder guy, And same thing, that's something I think that really, really differentiates them from other brands, because other brands, you'll see that someone has some kind of muscle, some kind of physique, some kind of thing, right? But Gymshark, in their clothing, they're all like normal people with normal physiques. And that's what really good is, because like someone like me who's like just had a whole transformation and is trying to feel confident in my own skin, I need something like that. I need something that inspires me in a way that, okay, you know what? I don't have to be a 16-inch Arnold Schwarzenegger or like Dwayne Johnson to wear this clothes. I can just be who I am and still go with this brand.
All right, so what I will say is this. I've been to the website too. Those people are pretty fit.
Okay, there's a difference. No. I mean, there's a difference between being fit versus being bodybuilder fit,
Okay,
right,
so they're not using that initial target audience for their actual market.
Yeah, like they don't have the mindset of like you have to be extremely muscular to wear that kind of clothing, Like you'll see a lot of skinny, like in real life, like I go to the gym and everything, you see a lot of like skinny people wearing Gymshark stuff.
Yeah,
there's no judging them. Be like, hey, you got no biceps, why are you wearing that tank top?
It's interesting because I don't know if you guys saw, but they got into a little bit of hot water with their social media because of this. But I don't know if we'll touch on this later. Did you guys see the Instagram post that they got a lot of heat for?
No.
They basically had a model that was wearing Gymshark, and she was not up to their standards, at least up to their visual standards that they were propagating. And so
the most recent one,
I don't know if it was most recent. No. It was like back in actually it was this year, but it was like back a couple months ago. But we can definitely get into that later. But it's interesting that you say that they market themselves that way. But I wonder if everyone's perception of that when they go to the website, when they go to the Instagram, is the exact same thing.
I mean, I think it's more from I mean, if you're honing down specifically to the website branding, I think it's the industry standard. Like, I don't think they have an option there, because you pick up any clothing brand, right? There has to be some kind of fitness. I mean, the past 5 years, I would say people have become more inclusive of like, love your body, this and that, whatever it is, this model, that model. So you have all kinds of physiques coming in, right?
Yeah.
But in a basic clothing apparel standard, I think there's a certain expectation of what a model should look like.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about fitness culture, what that entails, the pros and cons of that kind of thing. right? So Rafi, this is a space where you're in. Um, like there are. Let's start with the positives, right? Like the only way Gymshark is able to get to 1.45 billion, in my opinion, one of the only ways is because of this fitness culture, right? Because
Sure.
they're able to play on this, right? And they're able to maximize on people's feeling of insecurity about their bodies, right? But now let's Abdul Mannan, Rafi, why don't you guys hit on some of the negatives that result as playing on these insecurities?
Sure. And a lot of this I can personally relate to because just like any other person, when you're going through a whole transformation, when you're working out, you have an image in mind. You see someone and you don't just imagine. That image is there because someone put it there in front of you, you know? And that's what the negative is, that you start feeling very disoriented. I think the word might be dysmorphia. I don't know if that's like the body dysmorphia, right? Where
Mm,
people have a psychological negative effect. So that starts to creep in, not because of the way you are with your body, is because you start comparing yourself from your body, you know? Like being in this fitness space made me realize, like, initially, not gonna lie, that was me. Because for me, it was lack of knowledge. You know, I was just like, man, like, how is that guy so ripped? He's 26, blah, blah, whatever. But as you progress through the stages, you'll realize that there's a whole bunch of factors that come into it. But
mhm.
you don't know that. I don't know that. And what you know is what you see on the social media pages, on the posters, and that kind of like puts into your head that, you know what, I can never get to that level. These guys are doing something that I can never do. I don't have it in me. So that's like
Yeah,
one of the. I think that's a biggest negative aspect of the fitness culture, is that all these marketing, all these brands, like, they tend to basically they get their products to sell in a way that, you know what, if you're able to achieve this or buy this, then you need to be in that space of, the perfect body.
yeah.
Abdul Mannan, you have
And
anything to add to that?
I think from a branding perspective, when you it depends on how you brand yourself. Do you brand yourself? What is your target audience? Is it like the actual people that are going to the gyms and already fit and working on physical fitness, or are you doing this thing where kind of Nike does it a little bit better, I think, than other people, where they talk about this idea of striving for that victory, striving for that greatness. And if you are, then you want to have good representation in your models, in your marketing. And so the negative impact is that you have that discrepancy, and then you lose a potential audience that you might have been trying to target. Like if they're really about revolutionizing the gym culture and making sure, like, making a movement about wellness and physical fitness, that might be something to consider, like kind of like going forward. I don't know if Chima, that's what you wanted to add on to that. Um,
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I did want to bring it back real quick to the stringer. I wanted to dive in on that a little bit because I think it's really important to learn from what they did. And so, Rafi, can you give us a description of what the stringer looks like real quick?
okay, well, just
he,
a
he was gonna
disclaimer:
wear a stringer for the episode, and then you told him.
I don't own a stringer, by the way,
Oh,
but I will describe it for you. So it's like a regular tank top, right? But then it's like it comes only till your half of your chest, basically covers your chest from here, and your delts, your traps, your biceps, and your ribs are basically shown.
mhm.
But then there's also this, and it's like a really thin from here, so your traps and your shoulders are shown more, they're visible more, and it covers up. It's in a more like a V, like a loose baggy style that comes up, and that if you're pretty built, then you just fit into it.
Perfect, perfect. So, for the audience, I want you guys to keep that picture in mind. And then
Just don't imagine me in it.
think of the last time that you went to a gym. I'm sure you've seen people that have like a regular t-shirt that they just ripped off and cut holes in.
Yeah.
That's like a pretty common like thing that happens at gyms. And so
Aesthetic.
what Gymshark was able to do is see that, hey, like instead of like ripping your shirts, we could just sell them a shirt that already matches this. You know what I mean? So instead of destroying a shirt, like we'll just give them what they want from the very beginning. And so my next question is, Rafi, that the initial people that they reached out to, those people were bodybuilders, right?
But bodybuilders, and it's more back then. It was more about, they were aesthetic models. They weren't like big as Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they weren't as skinny as an athlete. They were like somewhere in between, like the ideal aesthetic physique that someone would
Perfect.
want.
Perfect, right? So for them, that makes even more sense, right? People are looking at them for the shape of their body, and so
Yep.
they designed a product for that. And so one of the stories I remember, I think it was on one of his vlogs, is he mentioned how he initially, the first couple of products he sent to the people, I forgot the names, or like one or two people, and then they got feedback from them. They were like, hey, how does this fit, whatever. They made changes to their design based on what they were saying. So
Sure.
now, for the audience, for the people that are listening, this is the most critical piece of advice that we can learn from Gymshark, I believe. And that is, number one, you understand where your target audience is, who they are, and you give them the product and ask them how to make it better. Now, what that does is you have an influencer now, an aesthetic model, who has ownership over the product. And they feel like they're a part of developing the product. And so now I don't even have to say, like, hey, can you promote this? They're going to be promoting it because they want to, because this is a product that they designed, right? And so
they're part of the story.
What was that?
They're part of the story.
Yeah, they're now part of this startup story, right? Like, for any startup out there that's listening, any brand that's trying to grow their brand, like, make sure you find out who your target audience is. Do the time to actually research who it is that we're making these products for. Once you find those people that are loyal to your brand, talk to them, understand what they want out of the product, what would make it better, and then actually use that feedback to make a better product. I'll give you another example of this working pretty well. So we have a friend. Oh, actually, he was on the podcast. I think we can name drop him. I think it would be cool, okay? So Momo, who is not getting paid by Branding Deep Dive, not getting a cent, right? I know that Momo actually listens to this stuff, right? There's not a lot of people out there that actually listen to the whole episode. Momo's one of them. So I'm like, okay, Momo, every time an episode drops, I'm going to send it to you. And let me know what you think. So the intro sequence, outro sequence, transitions, all of that stuff was Momo's idea. And now, last week, Momo actually reached out to me saying, hey, check out this news article. Having this guy on the show would be really cool. Is it cool if I reach out to him on Branding Deep Dive's behalf? I was like, dude, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, like now he has ownership over the product. And I hope, Momo, I hope you don't mind us sharing that story. But I think it's really important to have people like that in your corner.
That feel comfortable giving you feedback, whether it's positive or negative, knowing that they are making an improvement in your product, in your business, in your service.
And one thing that you touched on, Cheema, is that, I mean, of course, the whole influencer aspect is there, but Ben Francis himself gets inspired by a lot of feedback that he gets. Like he has a camo design that's pretty popular right now on their website and a lot of their outfits. And the reason why he designed that because he went to one of the trade shows in Canada and he talked to one of the customers there and he's like, hey, you guys got all this cool stuff, but you guys don't have a camo design. And the next year he dropped the camo design and he shipped it out, and it was a big hit. So like he believes in the values of his feedback that he gets, and his customers, not just like a customer service report that's sent back and then he just overlooks it.
And another thing I want to touch on here is now we're going to kind of transition into overall company culture, because having this kind of mentality is not just like, hey, it's good for your brand. It makes, it makes your ambassadors feel better and stuff like that. It's not just that, but like it really, from an overall branding perspective, it makes you a lot more agile. And so in one of his YouTube videos, Ben Francis is talking about the recent investment that they got. So I guess they got a 20% stake that they sold of their company to a investment group. And he goes through and he says, I wrote this down. So he says, the old playbook for success in brands was you create as much product as you can and you put it in as many stores as you can, and you try to reach as many people as you can. The problem is, like, it was good for fast growth, but the problem is that leads to slow, clunky businesses that don't truly understand their consumers and have no control over the consumer experience or their data, right? And so that shows you exactly what Gymshark values versus old brands. So old brands would have been, hey, let's get this in Meijer, Walmart, CVS, wherever we can get this, try to reach as many people as possible, but then you lose that feedback from consumers. You lose the data seeing what consumers are buying. You lose understanding what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And so keeping their experience online and not going through traditional retailers, maybe they slow down the growth of their business a little bit. But in the long run, that gives them access to consumer preferences in a way that you really just can't get in the old school traditional retail market.
And this is a model that's like adopted by some of the biggest companies too. Cheema, you can probably confirm this, but one of the things I was reading about was that the new CEO of Gymshark, he was like a former Reebok associate, marketing something, and one of his mantras was Amazon's mantra, which was start with the end user in mind, and then work backwards. So Amazon's using it, Reebok is probably using it, and now Gymshark is using it, and it's clearly a successful model to adapt if you're thinking about it, versus the old model, which, like Cheema said, just kind of put your product out there. I love that they say that once you give it out to retailers, you have no opportunity to get that feedback. And I was just like, man, that's so true. Like, because now
yeah, that's the very interesting thing is that, yes, technically speaking, you do have you can get feedback still. It's just the process of rolling out those changes is a lot slower because now
there's a middleman.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's a very smart thing that they do because that also keeps you directly connected with the brand. You don't. A lot of times, what happens that over the years, when you start seeing these big brands come in like retail stores, you forget that their actual store even exists. You start buying so much from Walmart and all these shops that you think that okay, this is where you buy it from, unless someone tells you there's a store. But the whole thing with Gymshark and Amazon and all these brands is that there's a direct connection. Someone has an issue, they talk straight to Gymshark. They don't talk to Walmart. They don't talk to a middleman. And Ben Francis himself said that he did pass on, like he did lose a lot of potential revenue that could be coming in, but he didn't care for it as much because he wanted to build that connection directly of having the traffic come to the website and basically it's directly buying from the store. There's no middleman in between.
Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about that here, I really want to make sure we drive this point home as much as possible, is that Gymshark, you guys listening might be thinking Gymshark's $1 billion company. I can't really do that. But that's the point we're trying to make here is that you don't have to be $1 billion company to take these principles and apply them to your business. You don't have to be worth $1 billion to listen to your customers. Branding Deep Dive is not $1 billion company. If anything, we're probably like negative $400. But we're able to take feedback from the people that do listen. And actually, I think this is a good plug right here. If you have some feedback, make sure you reach out to us. Let us know how we can improve, that kind of thing. But really, you don't have to be $1 billion company to take these principles and really improve the user experience for your customers. Next thing I want to get into is let's talk a little bit about. So Gymshark is a company that has a chief branding officer, and this is not a common role. Like, you don't see this. I mean, I guess some companies have chief marketing officers. Other companies have like other roles that are similar to this, but
chief design officers.
Yeah, like if you're a design company, you'd have a chief design officer.
Yeah.
Like in general, you don't see a lot of businesses with a chief branding officer, chief marketing officer, that kind of thing. You don't see someone with a branding background sitting at the highest table in the company. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They don't have a voice at that level. At Gymshark, they do. So I want to talk about this a little bit. What kind of impact does that have on their brand, their culture? Why is that important? What are the implications for businesses out here today that are trying to, launch their brand?
I think one of the interesting things to see is like why this position came into existence in Gymshark in the first place, right? Ben Francis was the one-man army, and then he brought in Steve from Reebok. At that point, he was until April or March of 2019, maybe even before that, Ben Francis himself was the chief branding officer because he realized that that's what he does best. He does best organizing events. He does best marketing. He does best doing things. So I mean, to give himself a title, that a position came into existence, and then as the year moved on and as they grew more, he realized now he has to expend more of his time into other stuff, like into bettering and perfecting the stuff that he's doing good. So he brought in Noel, right? So I think it stems from the necessity of what you want to bring the company to. I think after a certain point, Ben Francis realized that it's no longer just about apparel. They're building communities. They have to make a brand, and for that, the position of a chief branding officer was born. And of course, from now on, whoever comes in a position, the position already exists. It's just a matter of who replaces the person currently and takes it to the next level.
What's crazy about that position, also Chima, is that when he was describing what his role was when he was, when talking about Ben Francis, the founder, when he's describing his role as a chief branding officer, he says that like the CEO takes care of what is going on today, and the CBO takes care of what's going to happen tomorrow, in like very short words. And what that means is that for a company that's interested in not staying stagnant, for a company that's interested in not being the status quo at where they're at, for a company that they themselves say that they want to outcompete Nike and Under Armour and Adidas and Reebok and all that stuff, you have to have a vision for the future. And they give these specific roles, put all of these roles under the chief branding officer. And that's kind of what he describes it as being like. The role of that position is to kind of look forward so that we can so that they can keep growing. I said we, like we're part of the team too. I was like, I'm part of that chief branding officer team, dude.
I'll let him know, Abdul Mannan.
Yeah, like put me in.
What I want to touch on here, Abdul Mannan, what you brought up is how it's about the future, and I think it's really important to understand that, you know, as we go on 2021, 2025, 2030, the only thing that remains is going to be brands, right? You got your Amazons, you got your Walmarts, and then the only other thing that remains is going to be your brand, right? If you can't build a customer, a tribe, and you can't have loyalty, like you're gone. You know what I mean? Like people can get better prices at other places. You need to build something where people feel an emotional attachment to. And that's why it's so important in today's day and age. You have to take decisions. You have to have that lens on when you're making those decisions.
All right. So while we're talking about like branding, right? Of course, the branding officer is planning everything, but let's try back to the company brand in itself. The reason why Ben Francis started vlogging and started making YouTube channels is because like he realized that one of these trade shows that he was at, he saw that how crazy people are, that now people just wanted to know. Now at this point, Gymshark is already well known, so nobody really at this point wants to know what Gymshark is anymore. They want to know what the owner is, or what the founder is, what his day to day is, or how he's getting this company to grow. So that's the reason why he started vlogging, because again, we come back to customer experience. He wants to give the people what they want. He wants to give the buyers what they want. He wants to give the customers what they're asking for. And that's how he's already like strengthening those relationship that he's already built by selling his products. Now he's going to give them a little bit of a personal connection by giving them the insight of how how a company's built and what a day-to-day looks like.
We'll be right back with more from Rafi Hussaini. Hey everyone, Ahmed Cheema here. I want to share with you another project that I'm working on called the Weekly Rundown. It's a Sunday morning email newsletter covering the week's business and political news and why all that stuff matters to you. It's a quick read, it'll take you maybe 5 minutes, and we also record an audio version if you prefer that. This past week, we covered Oprah's big interview, increasing unionization efforts across the US, and a study on violence against women. I'm really excited about this, and I hope everyone subscribes. Go to theweeklyrundown.substack.com to check out our latest issue and subscribe. That's theweeklyrundown.substack.com. I will put the link in the description. Thank you for your continued support. And now, back to our discussion with Rafi.
Cheema, I wanted you to go in a little bit about, I know we talked about Amazon a little bit, but there's no company that can kind of scale this fast and this effectively without, leadership principles in mind, without good leadership culture. And I can kind of talk in and out about this, but like I want to hear from you. What are some of the things that you saw, particularly in Ben Francis, or the culture or leadership in general at Gymshark, that you feel like are important to, or important principles to understand when it comes to growing and scaling your company?
Yeah, I think Rafi did mention that a little bit, and I think talking about his YouTube page, there's a lot of content on Ben Francis, himself personally talking about things, and you can see his perspective and how his vision for the company. One of the things that he mentions, I think I wrote this down, this quote, and he says that I don't do this for money, I do this for the complete and utter joy and the ambition to leave a legacy and be a part of something bigger than me. Right? And Rafi, you mentioned that earlier in the episode as well. When we're building brands that people want to work for, let me take a step back. I have worked in an environment where every day coming in was such a drag. Like, I had to pull myself out of bed to go to work, right? And then I have also worked in an environment where every day I felt like so energized coming to work. I'm passionate, excited, and like I have energy for the things I do. And the difference between these two things, I was doing the same thing. My role was the same. The difference really was that in one environment, the leadership team was able to bring it back and explain and show me how my contribution played a part in the bigger vision that the company was going for.
Do you see
Right.
Ben Francis? I was going to say Ben Shapiro. Ben Francis doing this.
Yeah, for sure, right? And so what he's saying in that episode is that, like, look, I'm trying to build something that's bigger than me. I'm trying to build something for that's going to outlast me. I'm trying to build a community of fitness people. So one of the things that I want to highlight here is that they spent $7 million on Gymshark HQ. Rafi, can you quickly talk about what is in Gymshark HQ?
Right. So they have their warehouse, which is of course where they stock up all their clothing, and then they have their offices, and they have an exclusive Gymshark gym, which is only for their staff and athletes. And out of that, it's only for people they invite that are not part of the Gymshark family. So it is a whole lot of, like, I would say, a higher end, like a really exclusive club that you want to be a part of, and you can only think about it, you can only imagine being a part of it unless they ask you to they ask you to come and work out in it. So that's
Right.
a really, like, you're just basically spending $7 million to increase the curiosity of people around you.
Right. And that's the thing I want to highlight, right? Like, if I'm running a company and I want people to be creative and we want people to come up with these ideas that serve the fitness community, this is exactly what I would do. Right? Like, you have a custom built gym that looks dope. You know what I mean? Like, you go in, you're like,
Sweet.
man, this place is sick. They got projectors, they got things that they can test out new materials. You mentioned The Rock tests out all the materials and he puts his stamp of approval on it. Like, this, as an employee, if I was an employee there, I would be so bought in, thinking that we are making products that are actually, changing the game, changing what it means to be, wearing fitness gear, right? You're testing out new things, you're trying on new things, you're actually going to the gym, maybe trying on like a tracksuit that no one's ever worn before, going to the gym, a really dope gym, by the way, and, like, running for 2 miles, right? That's an experience that you can only have if you're a part of that company, and that shows you what the company's trying to do, right? So when we talk about having people bought into the vision, that's the kind of thing you have to do. That's an investment you make so that the people at every level understand what it is that we're trying to build here. Another thing, in that same interview, Ben Francis was talking to the chief branding officer, Noel, and they were talking about, so Noel was like, look, I've consulted for a lot of brands, and what's interesting is that whenever people look at Gymshark, they look at it through their lens. So influencer marketing people think that Gymshark got so big because of influencer marketing. People that do social think it's because of social. People do this, blah, 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 right? He's like, the one thing that I see that's truly different about Gymshark is the passion that the people have for this company, for really seeing this company grow and be the next big thing, right? And the point that I want to make is that Ben Francis is able to do this because he got them bought into this bigger vision of what Gymshark could be.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're talking about, go ahead, Abdul Mannan.
No, go ahead.
If we're talking about, like, how Ben Francis is all about community and all about customer satisfaction. Like, the reason why I keep bringing this up, because there's really nothing else about Gymshark that makes them excel. Like, their customer appreciation and customer satisfaction is so good. Like, personally, Ben Francis is involved in it. You don't see that a lot of CEOs or anyone in that position as much. Maybe Amazon, I don't know, but
How's
you
he
know,
involved in it?
that's what I'm trying to say, right? When he first started off, when they were having one of the biggest Black Friday sales, right? And their website crashed, like any other website, because they're just growing up and all that. There's like just getting big, and their website crashed. So there's a lot of customers that were not happy because they didn't get their products. He handwritten notes, 2,500 handwritten notes to his customers, apologizing for the crash and giving discount for the upcoming Gymshark products. Like, you don't find people as involved. Like, I personally would not sit and write 2,500, for people like from a time perspective, like you gotta see like how much he's already making millions. You already got like tons of things going on in his head. There's like a huge crash. Instead of dealing with the crisis, he is making sure that his customers don't feel left out. And that again goes back to the whole customer experience and building loyalty and trust, because he made that sacrifice. Whatever time it took him, whatever effort he took, he had to make that back then. So they're still stuck with him and they're still appreciating the company right now.
I wonder if that did that happen before he became chief branding officer, or was he still CEO at the
No,
time?
I think he was still CEO back then, because this was
So
around
he
the
had
first.
that vision, yeah.
Yes, he was around the first 5 years when they first hit 52 million, and things just went crazy for him. Like, he did not expect 52 million in 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's so. Taking the time out to handwrite notes, that is something. This is another practical thing that any business is listening here can do. Like, if you guys mess up, handwrite the notes from the top down, send them to your clients, customers, whoever it is. Like, it's going to happen. And how you respond to when you mess up, that's what separates you as a brand. And that's what people will remember.
And I think one thing I would say that's like, being in a another thing, the reason why Ben Francis inspires me. I mean, again, everything on media and everything that you see is different. But sometimes when a person speaks, you can see how genuine they are. It's all about how, and this is their hashtag as well, which you can see on their HQ as well. Is stay humble. You are actually a millionaire. You're at that level. You could not care about these people. Like 2,500 customers. Who cares? I'm already making millions. But you have that within you. You have that humbleness in you that, okay, you know what? These are the people that value. These are the reason. These people are the reason why I'm at this position. So for, as Chima mentioned, for any brands out there that are trying to get into it, like, don't, even if it's a single customer, don't miss that opportunity to make things right with them.
That's a great point. Yeah. And if we're going to be speaking on what inspires us from like Ben Francis, there's another thing that startup companies can take away too. We don't realize this until later on when he starts telling his story, but like he started in college while he was taking courses, and then after college, so his day would be like morning courses, afternoon it was like 5 to 10, or like what I wrote it down, it was like 5 to 10 p.m., 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. he'd be delivering pizza, or like afternoon he would be delivering pizza, and then the rest of the time he dedicated it to Gymshark, like printing, getting the sewing together, getting the screen printing on and everything. And I just like his work ethic was definitely inspirational. And that's something that whether you're, big time company or startup can do, is, perfect your work ethic if you can.
The other thing that I'll hop on and touch on based on what you just said is that passion is contagious.
It is.
And so I think a lot of times people that are trying to find their career, trying to do something, you know what I mean? They're always looking for like, what's my passion, quote unquote, right? And I think what we should really be trying to find is like, where can I go? What kind of environment can I be in where I get passionate, right? And so Ben Francis is this person that's super passionate about fitness, right? And so the people that are also attracted to working here and people that buy into this brand are also super passionate about fitness. And so the thing that I want to highlight here is that passion. Hold on, I forgot what I was trying to say.
I mean,
Okay. So let me go back. Let me start this whole thing again. Abdul Mannan, you brought up a good point, and I think one thing that we have to touch on as well is that passion is contagious. I think a lot of people that are, looking to get into the workforce and looking to study something in college, they're looking for like, what am I passionate about? And that's a good approach, right? Like, what do you like to do? But know that if you're not in passionate company, that's going to sizzle out. And the hope, let me make it real meta again. I know we talk a lot about the Branding Deep Dive podcast, but the hope with this podcast, really, like, if you're listening to this podcast, the hope is that our passion for branding, somehow a little bit of it trickles into you. I'm talking to you, the listener, right? And so we're hoping that by listening to this stuff, listening to our analysis. Of course, we're not like professionals or anything. We're not like, changing the game out here, but like our little analysis that we're doing here, and we're getting excited about it. We're hoping that this little piece of excitement also translates to you and what you're doing in your business and how you can start taking those lessons and really improving your customer experience.
Man, that just reminded me of another thing that I was like inspired by Ben Francis, or actually the Reebok guy, what was his name, Steve Hewitt or whatever. He says that one of the reasons why he jumped on with Ben Francis really quick was that he saw that Ben Francis early on was had the ability to what he called fail fast. Because we know that Ben Francis, he started with drop shipping supplements, like nutritional supplements, and that failed, right? And then the next thing he tried selling car number plates. Like, can you guys believe that? Or like plate designs, and then that failed too. Two businesses failed before he did it. And then what Steve saw was that he failed fast and learned fast, and so this is his third business that he's trying, and that's something as people who have a startup business idea, or just ideas in general that they haven't gotten started with. Remember, you got to fail a few times before you can get something going. So, if you're never going to start, you're never going to fail. If you're never going to fail, you're never going to get to where you want to be. And so I think that's a great lesson in Gymshark here as well.
Yeah, and I think we've talked.
I think you guys just got your branding deep dive quote by Abdul Mannan. Put that in there. If you don't start, you don't fail. You don't learn.
There you go. I mean, it's just a reiteration of Michael Jordan quotes or Steve, Michael Scott, or whoever. You miss 100 of the shots you don't take, Michael Scott.
We've talked about this before on the Branding Deep Dive podcast about the minimum viable product, and so just to touch on it again a little bit, is that some companies, let's say mature companies that have been in the industry for a while, you spend a lot of time and energy on getting the perfect product and then you release it, right? Whereas a lot of these newer companies that are coming out, maybe they don't have the full product, what it looks like in the end version, but they're putting it out there, they're getting feedback, and they're iterating, right? And so that's really the business model and the speed and the speed that you need to have to compete nowadays. You can't just spend 4 years crafting something up and then putting it out there and then, okay, the customer doesn't like this. Now it's going to take us another 4 years to fix that. You know what I mean?
The longer you take to set your thing up, the more resistant you are to feedback. So it's like if it didn't take much to put it together anyway, then you're open to more feedback, and then iterative changes can happen.
And it's interesting that you guys bring this point up because in one of the interviews, I think it was one of his interviews of how Gymshark started, he mentions that, we saw all this growth, we saw all this progress, right? But none of it was like, oh, this is our business plan. We didn't plan any of this. We were just doing it in hopes that it'll make a difference, it will help someone, and it just happened. And that, I think, brings a really, really important point, is that even my dad gives me advice on this, is that, like, don't, if you do something for the aspect of just making money, you'll be stuck in that, in like, I guess you call it like a black hole or whatever, yeah? Because you'll be thinking that, oh, I'm not making any money out of it, I'm putting so much effort, nothing's coming out of it. And at that point, you don't see how many people you've helped along the way. So that's what Ben Francis did. Instead of seeing the money, he saw what he was helping. He didn't care about the money, and money just came and he just grew where it is. But the fact that he still stuck with the values that he had in the beginning is something that really, I think, a lot of brands out there can inspire, that never, ever forget your basic values that you started with. Don't let it be in the fact that, now I'm a millionaire, billionaire. Now it's all about the money. Forget the customers.
How much do the stringer vests actually help their clients, though? I'm just kidding.
No, but if you put a stringer vest in a Photoshop, I think you can get on their page.
No, but
I think it saves a collective, probably, let's say there's 1 million people that are into fitness in the United States. It probably takes 15 minutes for each cut-up shirt, to actually take scissors and cut the shirt. So I would say it saves time over millions of minutes. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, but Rafi, you're right. And one of the things you realize is that, I don't know if we want to transition into this or not, but like, you notice that they start, because of the iterative process, they start changing their main product line and their main USP, which is, Cheema, you want to define that for us? I forgot what it stands for.
Unique selling.
I'm going to actually ask you, you might have to cut this out, but what the heck is USP?
Unique selling proposition.
unique
We
selling
mentioned
proposition.
yesterday. I'm like, what is USP?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you
Can
see
you say
that
the question again?
so the question is, well, I guess what I was trying to say was that with Gymshark, they're in this iterative process where they start with a unique selling proposition, but then they're getting all this feedback from their target audience. The question is, how much do you let the target audience dictate what your values are and your goals and your products are, versus how much do you have your own influence on that product? I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that, answers about that, but I have some thoughts. But I'll let you guys go first.
Uh, so I think I don't think when it comes to values, there's much that can be governed or said by the customers unless there's a whole negative aspect. There's some kind of like injustice and everything that people that company drove into. When it comes to
Hmm.
your values need to be true to yourself first and then to the customers. But I think when it comes to a product, there has to be a balance between, like, for example, with Ben Francis, he sold stuff that he liked,
Hmm.
and eventually people liked it. So there's no way that what you and I like, we're the only ones who do that. There's like millions of people out there. So
Yeah.
I think for that, like, you need to find a balance where, like, of course, a customer's gonna come, like with the whole camo thing. Customer came up to him, and he didn't just like listen to that customer and be like, okay, you know what, you just told me I need camo, I'm gonna make it tomorrow. They tried it out. They probably sent it to a bunch of influencers, and it worked. So there's always that niche where you gotta find that what the customer wants and what your company's providing, and find the perfect balance in between. I highly doubt that every single person that the customer wants is out there. There's definitely things that they don't like because the athletes don't like or the influencers don't like because that's what the general population goes off.
He calls it finding the diamond in the data. So you're going to get a lot of data, but you got to find the diamond. Put in
Yeah.
the work to find the diamonds. Okay.
Can
Chima,
we
you have
touch on that
thoughts?
a little bit?
Well, I mean, when you have this iterative process, you're getting so much feedback. You ask for it, and now people are giving it. It's not all feedback is the same, right? Some people have more experience with your product. Some people just have little. One of the things that I think it was, what's the name, Harbinger or whatever, the
Jordan
podcaster guy,
Harbinger.
Jordan Harbinger. One of the things he says is when he gets feedback on his podcast, he really values it because he knows that podcasters, the people listening to podcasts, are already invested. So, and the example he gives is when you go to a burger shop, like a burger factory or something, and a vegan leaves a review saying that, this place is terrible. And then Jordan Harbinger says that doesn't give you any feedback because all you know is that the place sells meat and not non-meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is not all feedback has the same value. And so what Ben Francis says is to find the diamond in the data, meaning look for those things that will actually end up helping your brand than hurting your brand. And one of the ways that was one thing. And then the other thing that I noticed that they do to tackle this issue is that they started this new line of their clothing called Legacy. And if you look at their Legacy collection, it's all of their old stuff. It's like their stringer vests. They have some of their clothing that has the old logo on it still, just to like really put in that legacy feeling to it. Because we know that they changed their logo, I think, eventually, actually pretty early on, probably, when they realize they're getting big. But their legacy collection is a way for them to stay true to their values and stay true to their roots without like completely changing who they are. But it's definitely a challenge because I feel like people, if you open the door to feedback, people will give you feedback.
Abdul Mannan, we talked about this a little bit with Chris. Remember, it's like, you go where the
Oh,
customer takes you, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
my opinion is this. So, this is just an opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think when you're in the leadership position of a company like this, or like let's bring it back to branding deep dive again, just so we actually have some creative control of where the product's going, right? So if I get feedback that I disagree with, which has happened a couple times, right? I'll generally just be like, "Hey, I hear you. I don't think that's a good decision.
Hmm.
Like I don't believe that's not the product I want to put out,
Hmm.
right? But that's because that's me, and this is the product that I want to put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think as a leader, there's also value in disagreeing,
Hmm.
right? And I think one of the things you see when it comes to leadership is you can't just be someone that, you know, flips on issues. You got to have a stance, and you got to be able to say no.
Yeah.
That's a very important skill in leadership. You
Yeah.
got to be able to say no quickly,
Yeah.
right? So you're not, the longer you, for example, when you're firing someone, right? So it's not working out. The longer you delay that,
Hmm.
your relationship with that person is just going to get worse and worse and worse,
Hmm.
right? It's just, and the longer you delay, it's going to be harder and harder to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it immediately, like number one, you're respecting the person's time. You're letting them know, hey, look, I gotta let you go. But
That's a good point.
like you're kind of. Have you guys seen Moneyball?
No.
Yeah.
So in Moneyball, the Billy Bean, who's the general manager, like you got to make
Brad
decisions like
Pitt.
that. You got to cut people, right? So Brad Pitt, who plays the character, and he's like, he hires Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen, no, is it Seth Rogen? Jonah
No,
Hill.
it's
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill.
He hires Jonah Hill's character to come be the assistant general manager, and he's just like a kid out of college, right? Who went to Yale and he's like super smart, but what happens is that he's the assistant general manager now, so of course the general manager is delegating some of the decisions to him. So a lot of the things that you have to do now Jonah Hill has to do. So he tells Jonah Hill, go tell this player he got cut. And he's like, dude, what? Like, I can't do this. And he's like super scared. He's like, how do I do it? And so the general manager's just like, look, you just got to be straight with him. Let him know. Say it quickly, right? Like, they're ball players. They want you to be straight with them,
Yeah.
right? People don't want you to fluff around the corners. If you disagree with the decision, disagree, let them know,
Yeah.
right? If they disagree bad enough, then they can start their own company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, go
No
do it
doubt.
yourself. But like,
No doubt.
if you are a loyal customer and you are someone that provides valuable insight, like I still want to hear what you have to say. I may not
Yeah.
agree with you 100% of the time,
Yeah.
but I do value that you took the time out to share that with me,
Yeah.
right? So that's my perspective on it.
And it kind of ties back into what Gymshark did with that one situation where they put up a model that didn't exactly fit their physique standards, and then people were like, "Oh, this is not what Gymshark stands for." Blah blah blah. People had thoughts on the brand, and then Gymshark's like, "We disagree. If you don't like it, unfollow." And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting." And then they're like, "We're going to be putting up more and more pictures like this." And I'm like, "Okay, let me see their timeline." I looked at September. This is when the picture was posted, and I go up all the way to December, which is where we're at now in January. But they actually never ended up doing that. So I was like, "Huh." I feel like they missed an opportunity, or they're not authentic to who they are.
But I mean, they definitely didn't do the posts, but they have a lot of models that don't fit the it's really weird that the way they have it, because
Uh-huh.
if you go and look at their certain models, all about these female models, they'll come up as like, you don't always have to be like athletic and all that stuff. Even a lot of male models, even though they're athletic, you'll have them in like clothed posts and stuff like this. I think they didn't really do the posts, but they use different avenues. Like the
Mhm.
Gymshark 66, the most recent video posted, their athlete, she's a video gamer. She's not even like a fitness gym person, whatever. But she did like a whole monologue, whole episode on their story of like what Gymshark 66 is and all that. And again, the most recent fact is that they hired and sponsored an athlete out of Canada. She's a Punjabi, so shout out to Abdul Mannan. Maybe you should go find her
I'm
and
not
get some.
Punjabi.
Trying to the Canadian part.
Yeah, I don't know.
But so now they're being more inclusive of how they have. And one of the really interesting things about, like, they're not really condensed in a market. Like, they don't have athletes who are just in the UK or just in the Europe. They have international athletes. And really, really cool thing about their whole athlete program is that they have people that may not be internationally famous, but that are really, really popular locally.
Mhm.
So every time they have like people scouting and monitoring people that tag Gymshark and do all this stuff to see how they're making an impact and how they're making a difference, to reach out to them. And they have people in like Germany and France, whatever it is. They're like local people that people get crazy if they see them, but they're not internationally known. And that's working for them because they don't care about the international face value. They just want the communities that they're serving to have
Ha-
value over there.
Have you been tagging Gymshark in your posts?
No, I'm going to after this podcast.
All right. I want to see Rafi as a Gymshark ambassador or athlete.
Oh,
Let's
one
hope.
point.
Let's
One
make
point
that
I want
happen.
to
2021.
One point I want to touch on that, what Rafi just mentioned, is that if you're a small business, you don't have to go after the biggest influencers in the world. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need 1 million followers. Like, you can find people in your local community, even if they just have 100 followers, but maybe those followers are people that actually listen and value what that person has to say,
Mhm.
right?
Actually,
And that go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Finish your thought. My bad.
And then a lot of times you can save money as a business, number one, like by paying less. But the second thing is you get more loyal followers because these people that are pushing products for, if you have 1 million followers, you get requests from all these different brands. So at a certain point, if you're a follower of this influencer, you're going to start tuning out some of the advertisements that come out. But now, if you're a smaller scale, like let's say you had a couple hundred followers, but you actually have a relationship with those followers, then those people are going to listen to what you have to say, right? And so if you're a business and you see people like that actually have a say in their community, you can leverage that. You can save money, number one, but now you have actual people that will actually engage with your brand.
And one of the really cool things about the point that you make, Chima, is you grow with the brand. That's a very huge trust factor that a lot of these athletes back then, even if they were pretty big, but this is a small brand. So like there's a whole different correlation that I already have 1 million followers and Gymshark's nothing. But they trusted Ben Francis. They trusted the work. They liked the quality. And back then, none of the athletes had any contracts. They would just give them free clothing. Now they have a 5-year contract, all these athletes, right? So that's the process that I think a lot of these small influencers, a lot of these businesses need to understand, that that's something that it's like a return investment. You invest in the people. They're not that big now. Neither are you. But you grow, they grow with you, or they grow and you grow with them, and that just takes off.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, and I think the principle that Chima mentioned is so important for a business that might have a product that is even more niche than the gym culture, right? So I know one of the things Ben Francis said, he knew that beauty, fitness, and music were the 3 most popular things that he could
Gaming.
get into, and gaming. I think that was it, yeah. But imagine you have something that's like super niche, right? It only behooves you to find those people that are interested in that, and they're not going to be big people anyway, right? But if you don't go after them, you'll never find that tribe that you're looking for, because you're going after the wrong people. That's super important, I feel like.
That's true, and like it's really interesting because like as we talked about the whole fitness culture and all that, you will see a lot of these athletes like just doing a day-to-day video. Not even, it has nothing to do with Gymshark. It's what their personal businesses are, their personal things are, but they are wearing Gymshark outfit, their Gymshark gear while they're doing day-to-day stuff. Nothing related to workout. That just like fits into a day-to-day life that you don't need to be a fitness, or you don't need to really wear Gymshark gear like me, for example. I'm sitting here talking to you guys in the Gymshark gear, so
Mm-hmm.
so that's a really good idea that they put out there.
Yeah.
Rafi, one of the things I wanted to ask you was about Ben Francis's YouTube channel. What role does that play in the Gymshark brand, do you think?
So as I mentioned earlier, that channel and that whole story of his vlogging started because customers wanted to see that. And now his most recent video is about him signing the $1.4 billion deal with the Journal Atlantic, right? So now with that videos being put out there, people know that what goes into making this brand a successful brand, what goes into these products that we love so much, what goes into the person, what not what goes into what the person behind all this brand is doing on a day-to-day life. He's no longer the CEO, he's no longer the CBO. Then what is he doing? He's not just sitting and just taking the share, the money, right? And that, I think, again, we talk about customer experience and customer connection, that now people know that, okay, this dude cares a lot more about the customers rather than he's just sipping some pina colada on the beach and just getting the money. He's actually putting in the work, even though the company's completely established. So the fact that he's posting all those videos, he doesn't even have that many followers on YouTube or on Instagram. He's not even in YouTube. He's like 200 something, and Instagram is like a couple hundred something. But he doesn't care about that. What he's doing is he's putting his day-to-day work, he's putting his deals, he's putting his ideas, he's putting the, and of course he doesn't put this before. It's all after it's been done and said, and it just gives people an insight. It's like, okay, wow, like, and the best part about it is that he makes it seem in a way that he's nothing special. You guys have seen the way he dresses, right? He's always in like full jackets, clothes, nothing fancy, nothing too crazy. He's always in Gymshark gear. He just goes to show that, if you're true to yourself, whatever I'm doing, everyone can do it. It's just you have to do it. You have to be consistent about it.
The other thing I noticed that his personal YouTube video does now is they're starting this internal podcast. They called it, or they had started an internal podcast, and now they're doing what's called an external podcast. But one of the goals of that podcast was, because the company had got so big and so international, they needed to make sure that all of their employees understood the culture at Gymshark locally. And so in order to convey that culture, they started this podcast, they started this blogging to show what is the culture like over here and what we expect from you guys in the United States, in Colorado, whatever, wherever they are, and share that culture just so they make sure everyone's on the same page.
That goes back to the internal branding that we were talking about, right? Where he's able to, like, having an internal podcast allows you to take Ben Francis's passion and instill it in people at the company.
Yeah.
Right? And so now, like, maybe your manager didn't do a good job of explaining why Gymshark exists, what your role is in the company, but now you listen to this podcast and you're like, oh, this is what we're building here. This is what we're doing.
That's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine being in Colorado. You don't even know who Ben Francis is. He's in UK. But then your manager's like, dude, you should have replied to that customer, man. Why'd you let him go? And you're like, dude, it was one customer. But then you hear Ben Francis' story about writing personal letters to all of his clients. And you're like, oh, okay. That's the culture. All right.
I wonder if Ben Francis does that. Just randomly sends like random emails, complaints, and see if anyone responds back to it.
No, I know you said he didn't like them. He didn't like emails, but
he doesn't. He doesn't like emails. He likes personal interaction with people. Yeah. He was actually planning to move to Colorado this year, but due to COVID, he kind of put on. I think majority of their sales are in the U.S.
So essentially, what I want to say is that, like, internal branding is you're having your employees understand your brand. That's important too. But these videos are on YouTube, documenting the journey. Rafi, why do you think it's important to, like, if I'm a small business, right? Why is it important for us to document our journey and share that with the world? Actually,
I think, in my opinion, again, take it with a grain of salt, like you said, it's really important to document your journey, because I'm gonna actually relate it to fitness first, and then I'm gonna come back to branding. Right? In fitness, there's this thing called progressive overload, which is basically you need to put your body through different stages where they are able to push more weight over time, and you're never gonna know how much weight you are gonna push next week or the next month if you don't track down the weight that you put last month. So you're never gonna know where you started from and where your progress is. You might every time you'll be in a stage where you plateau at, like, not progressing. And I think the same when it comes to branding is that if you don't document where you started or what were the right things that you were doing when you began, as you grew, if you don't document that, there's going to be a point where you're going to plateau and you'll be confused, like, what is not working right. And if you have it documented, you can go back and see that, okay, this is what I was doing, this is what I stopped doing, instead of not having anything and just being all over the place. I think documentation helps you break through plateaus and progress through your entire business growth, like you would have in your fitness journey.
Dang.
that's a really good point.
I love how you connected it right back to fitness too.
Yeah.
Genius.
Gymshark.
Dude,
Jesus, yeah.
Rafi's a fitness trainer, if you guys didn't know. All our listeners.
One more thing on that same note, though. So, as you mentioned, I totally agree. Like, looking back, and what is interesting is the more and more technology that we get in the world, the more and more numbers, the more and more metrics we have, and the more and more speed with which that we're going through these numbers and metrics, right? So I couldn't tell you so I work on process improvements at work. I couldn't tell you what I did a year ago. You know what I mean? Like, unless I went through my notes and kind of go through, like, oh yeah, this is what I did in June. Because it's just, we're doing so much. There's so many things we're working on, so many things we're tracking. Having this thing to look back to and see, hey, this is what we did, this is how we grew, that's really important. The other thing I want to add on is that gets you start to reach a different audience as well, right? So the people that are watching Ben Francis's videos are not necessarily Gymshark type people. Like, I first watched his videos because I think I was probably watching some other business video. I'm into that thing, but I was like, oh, dude, this guy scaled his business from 0 to 100 million. That was probably like a video like 2-3 years ago, right? And I was like interested to see how he did it. And so now you're reaching another audience, and now you're getting me bought into trying to get Gymshark to the next level. You know what I mean? I want to see Gymshark. I want to see the next video. I want to see him get to like 10 billion now. You know what I mean? So that's the cool part about documenting your journey, is that you start getting people that follow along the journey and want to see you succeed. You also get a lot of haters.
And a lot of the documentation has inspired a lot of entrepreneurs. Like you mentioned, there's not the whole there's like tons of people that don't care much about fitness, don't care much about things, but they care about making money. And if they find the right person, they find the right person the way Ben Francis did and all of that. If they find that those kind of videos inspire him, because one of the biggest thing with Ben Francis is that his age, he just turned 28. He's not even 30. So a lot of young entrepreneurs who are in that space are going to look up to that. If you say someone, hey, look up to Jeff Bezos, well, Jeff Bezos is already 40s, close to 40, I think. I don't know, Jeff Cheema, he's your boss. But that's not going to inspire a lot of young people. Of course, the whole money aspect, how he grew up there. But if they want to look at someone that's in their current space and time, with the changing times, and that is Ben Francis, I think, in today's day and age, a young upcoming entrepreneur.
Rafi, we have 2 closing questions for you. Before we get into that, where can people find you? I know you got a podcast you're working on as well. You're on Instagram, you're an influencer. So how can people get in touch with you if they want fitness coaching or they want to listen to your podcast for some fitness advice, that kind of thing?
Well, I'm going to put my number in the bottom of this video so y'all can reach out to me. So my Instagram handle, Rafi Hussaini, just DM me if there's anything you guys need. And of course, reach out to the BDD hosts, Ahmed Cheema and Abdul Mannan. They'll be my direct connection if you guys know them. So,
just a note, if we are referring you guys, we're going to charge you guys a little bit of extra because we get our cut in it too. So, no, I'm just messing. So,
man. Free personal training for both of you.
All right. So, Rafi, before we let you go, one of the traditions we generally have is like, what are some ideas or what is something that you would like to see Gymshark do?
I think one of the things that I would like for them to see is, of course, expand more into like the groundwork. They don't have stores, but I know that back when they were growing, they were doing a lot of trade shows and a lot of pop-ups. But in the Europe, and they did one in Ohio. So of course, with post-COVID, because now that I am personally excited about Gymshark, I want to be in that space. I want to see how it feels. I want to be in that environment. So I think they should definitely continue that, which was probably stopped a while back. And that way they'll have more interaction with people like me and people who are post-COVID and people new to Gymshark. And of course, that's going to help them grow their ideas.
And the last question, the branding deep dive tradition, is there another brand that you have the same sense of loyalty to as Gymshark?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, Under Armour's Project Rock.
Project Rock. Oh, yeah.
Project Rock.
Oh, both in the fitness space. Yeah.
But this is a controversial question, so
why are you so? I mean, you already mentioned it earlier, but is there anything else not in the fitness space that you're super into?
Not in the fitness space. Not really. I mean, a lot of fashion stuff like clothing, watches, and all that, but I'm not really loyal to a specific brand. There's certain things that I'll go based off how they feel and look for the most part. But I can tell you one thing as to like why I'm loyal to Gymshark and Project Rock is because because of the fact that everything is tested by the individuals that stand behind it. Everything is authenticated by them, and they stand by their brand. You don't have generic brands that are just putting stuff out there and don't have any feedback. I mean, the way you put yourself out there as a brand, Gymshark and Project Rock, that when you say that you've already tested this and done that, there's no question of a customer asking you that, hey, why doesn't this work or why doesn't that work? Because you're just making it clear that I tested it myself. I've done through all the trial and errors, and now it's in good hands for you to wear it.
The quality bar is really high.
Yep, that's what makes me loyal to these brands. And because I'm in that space, I work out a lot. I need something that's comfortable. I need something that's not sticky. It doesn't stink after the sweats and all that stuff. It really matters to me how my clothes fit and how they perform.
I appreciate you coming on the show, Rafi. Thank you so much.
I'm really excited to be here, guys. Thank you so much.
We'll see you later.
So a random fun fact about this episode is that this episode had the most bloopers we've ever had in one episode. Rafi's been with us in this podcasting journey since the very beginning, so we're kind of open with him, and that resulted in a lot of extra time in the edit. Now, as always, I have some key takeaways, but before we get to that, I want to share a clip from our episode on Belroy.
I remember actually when somebody looked at my, I feel like I'm being weird, but my Belroy keychain, I have a Belroy keychain. And they looked, is that like a Drake keychain? I was like, no, I don't, like I was mad. I was like, no, this is, like, I was like, man, I paid money for this to be a Belroy product, not a Drake product, So then, and then we were like, is that Drake? I'm like, no, it's not, it's Belroy. And then at that point, I can't even do my pitch anymore. I can't be like, yeah, it's Belroy, they make cool designs and stuff. It's just like, yeah, it's not Drake,
I mean, so, I feel like you can still transition, whatever, just pitch it if you really feel
no, man. Hey, I think it's really important what he mentioned is that, like, he paid money to be part of this tribe, and now you think I'm part of some other tribe.
Yeah, like, I'm not even a big Drake fan like that, man.
If you enjoyed our discussion with Rafi on Gymshark, I am sure you're also going to enjoy our discussion with Momo on Belroy. Go check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, here are my key takeaways. Number 1. Customer service. The story of Ben Francis writing all those letters really got to me. That is a lesson that you can apply even if you only have one customer. And it doesn't have to be when you mess something up. Try writing a thank you note. And number 2 is taking feedback from the influencers that you're working with. Nowadays, it seems like everyone and their mom is talking about influencer marketing. We all know how powerful that is. But what happens when you take feedback from your influencers and change your product based on that feedback is that you get a better product and you get these influencers bought into your story. They're now a part of the story and they will go out of their way to promote that story. If you are working with influencers, make sure you ask their opinion and try to take their feedback and make changes to your product and see what that does for your business. And as always, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.